All right, welcome everyone to this webinar on culturally relevant meals in the cafeteria. We're very excited that you are joining us. And next slide, Rebecca. If you're not familiar with Mass Farm to School, we are an organization that works statewide to strengthen local farms and fisheries and promote healthy communities by increasing local food purchasing and education at schools. There's a lot of ways you can get involved with Mass Farm to School. We have many professional learning opportunities like this one throughout the year. We have opportunities for networking. We have policy and advocacy work that you could be involved in. And we send out newsletters, Harvest of the Month newsletters, policy newsletters, et cetera, that you can receive. So reach out and stay connected. And I'm very excited for this learning opportunity today. Next slide, Rebecca. I am here with Rebecca Kelly. And Rebecca, I met Rebecca at a conference through her work with Food Corps. So Rebecca works with Food Corps as the Impact Partnership Lead in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Rebecca manages partnerships with 5 districts across 2 states and a cohort of 14 Food Corps AmeriCorps service members serving Lowell, Chelsea, New Bedford, Holyoke, and Providence. And so Rebecca is going to be teaching us a lot today and leading some really interesting conversations.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being asked to be here. I'm very excited for today. So in today's session, we'll be going over the history of equity at Food Corps and some of the tools that we have developed to track progress. I'll also share examples of what equity in school meals looks like at one of our partner districts, and then you'll get a chance to practice what you've learned here. So the main tool that we'll discuss today is shifting. And shifting is a tool that was developed by Food Corps staff to help us operationalize equity into all aspects of our work and identify areas of improvement. In this session, you'll learn what shifting is and how it's applied. And then in breakout groups, you'll get a chance to practice applying shifting in a real life school nutrition scenario. Excuse me if it's a bit noisy in my background, if you can hear that. There's some noise on the street, but
can't hear anything, Rebecca. That's great.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. So before we start talking about shifting, I first want to share with you the foundational organizational values and aspirations that inform equity work at Food Corps. So Food Corps is a service delivery organization that belongs to the children in the communities they live in. We also engage in policy and advocacy in service of children in the communities they live in. So because of this, we are a justice organization in that we shift power, access, and resources within our sphere of influence in order to help create more justice in the world for those most impacted by systemic oppression. Nourishment is an act of resistance because it is a critical component to learning. When kids are nourished, conditions of well-being improve and communities thrive. So our approach to food in school aims to celebrate and nurture the whole child through our hands-on and engaging programming. So building on our foundation of direct service, Food Corps advocates for policy change, grows networks, and develops food justice leaders. And through all these efforts, we aim to usher in a more equitable school food system. So our work leans into the potential of food and the opportunity to transform school systems and the policies that underlie them to make young people's lives and futures better. Food Corps' program works towards our long-term goals by advancing change at both the district level and the student level. So the changes that happen at both levels continuously reinforce each other and collectively work towards the long-term goal. So for example, our hands-on food education lessons, which our food education service members conduct in the classroom and in the cafeteria and in the garden, those lessons are intended to support students to make more nourishing food choices when they're at school. So this is a student outcome. But we know that in order to do that, the district and school need to make nourishing food choices consistently available, and that is our district outcome. sustainable systems that ensure access to nourishing foods and cultivate students' knowledge, agency, and motivation to choose those foods are what lead towards the long-term outcomes for students. So to bring out the values laid out in our identity statement to life, Food Corps has developed a comprehensive internal anti-racism strategy. It's a much larger document because equity is a complex and challenging thing to address in the workplace, but I will share with you today 3 of our objectives that lead our anti-racism strategy, and these are in no particular order. So 1 is maximizing our systems where we reimagine Food Corps' internal systems for liberation, and then we reimagine Food Corps' external systems to bend towards justice. Number 2, by maximizing our impact, we can enrich and empower students, schools, and communities to create environments in which every child knows the joy and power of food. And number 3 is maximizing our people. So that's educating and equipping the Food Corps team. So that's our staff, our service members, and our board to thrive in their roles and partner with communities to create a more just world. But with all that in mind, even with our anti-racism strategy in place, one thing we've learned is that the commitments that live on our website have little power if they are not made operational by intentionally integrating them into our day-to-day work. So shifting was developed as a shorthand for these weighty commitments. It prompts us to get specific about the different aspects of equity and evaluate our strategies and decisions. So you can think about each letter in shifting as a lever you can pull. It's rare that you'll be able to pull each lever to the same degree or even at the same time, but it's our responsibility to pause, to check that we aren't missing an opportunity, and to ask ourselves, have we done all we can to maximize equity inclusion? And shifting is a great tool to help us do this. So each letter in shifting represents a different aspect of equity that should be addressed in any given project. I'd love if participants could get off mute and read 1 letter at a time, if folks are willing to volunteer.
I'll start. This is Taylor from Andover. S is to shift power to community leaders.
Thank you.
Hi, I can go next. This is Callie. H is honor local experience, or sorry, expertise.
Hi, this is Maggie. I can go. I is interrupt oppression, internalize, and interpersonal.
Hi, this is Christine. F is foster diversity and inclusion.
This is Olivia. T is to try and know we might fail and set ambitious goals.
To be the ones that
Hi,
do the
this
thing.
is Ngake. I is to invest in equity.
Do the thing.
Any takers for the last 2?
I'll take 1. N, name and frame racism, ableism, and other forms of oppression.
I'll do the last one. G, grand time for sustainable change.
Great. Thank you so much, y'all, for voicing each letter. So as you see, each letter represents a different aspect of just how complex equity is. And by breaking it down by letter and in these sections, it makes it much easier to tackle. So we encourage you when you're trying to use shifting as an essential checkpoint, and you can use it as an essential checkpoint as you plan and evaluate projects and events, when you face weighty decisions, as you identify opportunities for personal and organizational growth, as you communicate to others how you considered and integrated equity into your projects and decisions and the tensions you had to weigh in that process. We also really encourage you to experiment with your own unique way of using it. Shifting is also a customizable tool that can meet you where you're at. And so that's really important to to note when you're using the tool. The examples that are going to be shared with you next are only suggestions to kind of jumpstart your thinking. They're not meant to be prescriptive or all-encompassing. And it might not be possible to produce every outcome that shifting challenges us to achieve in every project. But it is our responsibility to try to create the world we might that we want to see, even when we know we might fail. Our goal here with shifting is progress, not perfection. This is not easy work. It's very large and time-consuming work, and it's very important. So don't get so hung up on what you can't immediately achieve that you lose sight of the bigger picture, because nothing beats a failure but a try. So here are some examples of how Food Corps internally, externally, and with our other programs utilize shifting. Often you get that feeling at work that things are moving too fast, that we're in meetings, planning a project or responding to an urgent request, and you just get a feeling in your gut that things are off, almost like the people that need to be included in what happens next, the people most impacted by a decision, are not in the room with you. Shifting can help you actively combat some of this. So some examples of how we use it in Food Corps. Internally, our executive team utilizes shifting as a way to slow down and hold themselves accountable to decisions they've made and to equity. In our programs department, we use it as a tool to ensure that service member trainings and school, district, and partner events are accessible to the community. Food Corps currently has, externally, we have developed an external group called Food Operators and Leaders of Color in Schools, pronounced FOLKS. This is a great community that provides opportunities for AmeriCorps service members, alumni, and school nutrition professionals, as well as those aspiring to careers in this field, to connect around leadership development, mentorship, and networking. This group also serves as a community of practice around equity and often uses shifting as a way to talk about equitable practices. Our service members that serve directly with our food service departments in the school nutrition service track, they are trained at the beginning of the year on how to utilize shifting in various projects that they might do throughout their service year. And then additionally, just in school meals in general, we think of shifting as a set of best practices that can be used for all aspects of school meal programs. So one thing I want to highlight is that shifting is one tool in a larger recipe for success in creating culturally relevant school meals. We know that developing a culturally diverse school menu involves a diverse set of partners, financial sources, and the creation and reevaluation of a strategy and overall vision. So I just want to highlight that this is one tool that we hope will be in your toolkit that you can use as you move towards equity. So now I'd like to move on to some stories of equity in action. These stories were shared with me by Jennifer Smith, who served as a Food Corps school nutrition service member in Lowell Public Schools last year, and is currently the food services manager at Aramark Student Nutrition in Lowell Public Schools. She's also currently representing Massachusetts in a Food Corps national policy program called the Alumni Advocacy Leads, where we engage our alumni network in our various policy initiatives. So Lowell Public Schools, as a background for Lowell Public Schools, the food and nutrition services in the district are made up of dedicated, passionate, and friendly staff members committed to meeting the demands of serving healthy, tasty meals that are responsive to the students' growing preferences. So Lowell Public Schools is one of the most diverse school districts in the state. They're providing a high quality education to children from families who represent over 20 different countries and speak over 69 different languages. As a district that was under the community eligibility provision prior to the universal school meals passing into law, and still is all students eat breakfast and lunch for free every day, as well as a robust snack and dinner program offered at many of their schools. However, this does not mean that meals must only meet USDA regulations. LPS food services department believes students' voices and preferences must be reflected in the food they are served to ensure school meals are healthy, delicious, and culturally responsive to Lowell's diverse community. So this leads me to the first example of how Lowell honors its students through its school menu. So one thing that the Lowell Food Services Department has done is they've made a concerted effort over the last few years to prioritize student voice and choice in the school menu. Last year, they piloted the use of tablets to receive immediate feedback from students. And this year, it went very well last year. And so this year, they will be piloting feedback kiosks with the middle school students and see how that goes. This prioritization of like these feedback loops has allowed them a lot of success in terms of diversifying the school menu to meet the needs of the largely Asian population in Lowell. So one story of success has resulted in the introduction of ramen to the menu this year. So as Jen shares with us, through their various ways that they've been able to receive feedback from the student body, they've heard across the district from students in elementary school to middle school that they should serve ramen noodles. And this has been a meal that they have over time worked and reworked to try to get on the menu. And they were finally able a couple of weeks ago to launch a taste test of ramen noodles at the Lowell Public High School. And, based on how that taste test went, they should be able to get it on the menu by December. Jen shared this news with a middle school student and her friends who were very excited and were asking her about the ramen noodles and when it could be on the menu. When she told them that it'll be coming soon, the student and her friends' faces lit up with joy. They're excited to engage with this and excited to hear that their feedback is being taken seriously and implemented into the school menu. Lowell's commitment to that relationship building with the students through consistent outreach and implementation of their feedback is a good representation of the H in shifting because they're honoring and trusting the wisdom and expertise of the students. And by making the time to give out, collect, and evaluate feedback and prioritizing time for new recipe development, they have achieved also the G in shifting, which is granting themselves the time necessary to make decisions and do the work in a way that advances equity initiatives and creates minimal harm. And then another great example of equity from Lowell Public Schools is the unique way they incorporate teachers and projects in the classroom into their menu planning. So at Food Corps, we've seen how a connection between the classroom and the cafeteria make a significant difference in students' engagement with the school meals program by empowering them with food and nutrition education. Our research shows that 10 plus hours of hands-on learning can lead to positive changes in student behavior and mindset around food. So in this example that Jen shared with me, the Lowell Public High School has a great history and civics teacher named Jessica Landers, who every year works with a diverse set of students who speak many languages. As part of her history project, the students each year bring in recipes from their family's home countries or their own home country. And their recipe projects vary widely. And then all of those recipes get put into a book called Tasting History that then gets published and can be bought on the website and is widely available. A new edition is supposed to come out this month, which is very exciting. The Food and Nutrition Services Department take some of the recipes that they see in the Tasting History book and work with them to try to fit the USDA school nutrition standards and regulations. This has resulted in some successes, including last year, they were able to serve a Cambodian chicken dish that was in the Tasting History recipe book. What this does is it really allows students to feel a kind of ownership over school meals that makes them feel engaged in that programming, but as well as they're receiving that sort of 10 plus hours of hands-on education around food that makes them feel engaged and empowered when they come into the cafeteria. And for them to be able to see the connection between what they're learning in the classroom and then what they're eating in the cafeteria makes a significant difference for bring culturally affirming recipes to the menu, as well as just getting kids to participate in school meals. And this is another really great example of the H in shifting. Oh, great. And as was shared in the chat as well, Jessica and Alicia will be presenting a workshop on the Tasting History collaboration. So definitely good timing. So next month, you'll hear more details about this incredible project that has come out of Lowell. So now I'd like to take a minute to stop before we jump into our small group scenarios to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have or any thoughts you may have on what has been shared so far.
Rebecca, there is a question in the chat. Did you see it? That says, I would be very interested to know how Lowell Public Schools collected the feedback. You mentioned tablets during lunch or in the classroom.
Yes. So they were able to get tablets. This is something that actually Alicia really fought for and really advocated for. And they were able to get tablets that are then utilized by, because Lowell Public Schools is a food corps partner, we're able to utilize our service members to help create capacity to then take those tablets during lunchtime and during mealtime and just go around to the students and ask them to fill out their preferences. And the tablets can be as simple or as complicated as you want. They tend to be very simple and Lowell, from what I've seen, where they just have sort of a smiley face and a negative face for and a frowny face for the younger students, and then it can kind of get more complicated as the kids get older. But that is primarily how they go about collecting that feedback. And then because it's electronic, they get the feedback immediately. I hope that answered the question. Are there any other questions? And feel free to come off mute too if you have any lingering questions. Okay. Well, we're going to move on to, because it's 2:30, so I want to make sure that we have time for the small group scenario. So now with all of this background information and all of this news about shifting, now is going to be an opportunity for you to be able to practice what you've learned here. So you're going to get 20 minutes in a small group, a breakout group, to discuss an assigned letter of shifting. So a link for the Jamboard will go into the chat. There'll be a Jamboard that you can edit. At the top of, the first two slides are just informative slides in the Jamboard. So they're just telling you about the scenario and about shifting. And then the next slides from 3 onward, those are the different letters of shifting and different questions you have to ask yourself when you're considering those different aspects of equity. So each group will be assigned a letter and you'll have 20 minutes. Make sure you have a note taker who will take the notes on the appropriate slide. So some things to think about in terms of sort of guidelines and group agreements. This is a learning space, so it is just meant to be low stakes. You're just learning about shifting now. So now it's just like an opportunity to practice. There's no need for perfection. This is just designed to help jumpstart you into getting into the habit of using the tool. Come with your solutions brain. This is a time to identify missed opportunities, to identify new opportunities to be more equitable. And then important is bringing a yes and mentality to this. Equity is a complex problem. It requires complex solutions. So assume a positive intent, and then attend to impact. And before you move on from your letter, make sure you have time to ask yourself some of the following. If to any of the questions that are on the Jamboard, if the answer is no, ask yourself, why not? Make sure you're sure. Are you sure before you move on? Is there any way around the obstacle in front of you? Who else might you consult before finalizing your plan? And do you need to revise your definition of success? So these are some of the guidelines here for this. Before I move on to the scenario, I want to make sure that open up for questions in case folks have questions. That's okay, Anne Marie. If you want to just be a listening participant in a breakout group, that's fine. Excellent. Okay. So moving on to our next slide, if somebody doesn't mind coming off mute again and just reading the scenario. So everybody's going to get the same scenario. Any volunteers?
Ellie, I can jump in. The parent advisory group for your district requests a meeting to discuss how to integrate Indigenous Peoples Day into the school lunch menu. While you do not identify as Indigenous, you want to ensure you honor the culture. Use shifting as a tool to discuss how you can honor the culture while exposing students to the cultural aspects of various Native communities.
Thank you so much, Maggie. So the Jamboard should now be linked into the chat. And everybody, and then you all be broken up into breakout groups now. And don't worry about the scenario. Again, you don't have to worry about like memorizing this or anything. The scenario is in the first slide of the Jamboard. Oh, great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to stop screen share now, so folks can get into their breakout groups. So good to see you here.
It's good to see you too.
Is everybody back?
Yes, I think everyone is back.
Excellent. Great. So let's do a share out on how that went. I know, you're working on one letter and, you easily could spend way more time working just on a single letter. But often sometimes that can be challenging when there's like, there's a whole other section to shifting other than that one letter you're working on. But I'd love if people want to come off mute and share, what did your group discuss? What perspectives did a group conversation have in that, like, all these, what were all the perspectives and conclusions that came that you would not have come up with on your own? So feel free to come off mute, just like a share out of that time.
Hi, this is Olivia. I was a part of group 3 on I, which is interrupt interpersonalized, interpersonal and/or systemic oppression. And we talked a lot about a lot of different things. And you're right, Rebecca, it was hard to kind of stay on one letter. But some of the things we covered were kind of just self-education, and if you are taking on a project that you're not part of that, in this case, the scenario, you're not an Indigenous person, but you want to highlight that culture and those meals, then you really should do some self-education and not expect an Indigenous person to tell you everything about their own culture and put the burden on them of their time, energy, and effort. So obviously you want to include voices of Indigenous people, but you want to also, again, not expect free labor. So engage them in a way that compensates them for their time and energy. We talked also about, in terms of like having a day of a menu change and the education component that goes along with it for students. And maybe training staff and teachers and giving them some training material to then bring out to their students, so people are aware of what the change is going on and why. And a few other things. Maggie, if you want to jump in and add anything else.
Yeah, I think Olivia, you did a great job. I feel like other things that we mentioned were just starting small and thinking about the ways that you can do, one small highlight or piece of the puzzle, without, trying to spread yourself too thin, with acknowledging that you might not be the expert and really giving yourself a lot of the time to self-educate, as Olivia said, and uncolonize your internalized perspectives and insight. And so that if you wanted in the future to do a meal or project honoring a specific community, that might be something you want to start over a year out and really think about the ways you can authentically build relationships with folks so that it's coming from a place that has a lot of engagement from stakeholders that represent the population that you want to honor, in this case, Indigenous community, or Indigenous students who are attending your school. So, yeah.
Thank you for adding.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's so many great things were said in that about decolonizing your own way of thinking, about ensuring that when you work with community members that they're being compensated in a free way, in a fair way for how they're working with you. And also just as a show of value to their local expertise in this area. And I think one other thing is about the thing about thinking about this a year out, really giving yourself time. Time is a precious resource that most of us don't have, and that, like school meals especially, it's hard to have. And so giving yourself that leeway to allow a lot of time, knowing that you'll have to make time throughout maybe a year to make something happen. Did anybody from any other groups want to share what you talked about? Now, folks did the letters SHI, right? Those are the first letters because there are 3 groups. Yes. Okay.
I can jump in for group 1, and I will open it up to my fellow group 1 members as well after. But I think for shifting was our S for shifting. We really focused on just trying to kind of diversify who we are involving in this and who we're getting feedback from. I think we were kind of dipping into H and honoring a little bit as well. As someone said before, they're easy to kind of all marry together. But we had kind of highlighted possibly bringing in history or social studies teachers, as mentioned kind of throughout the presentation, and getting their feedback or kind of expertise on potential recipes. Of course, our initial thought was to reach out to Native and Indigenous communities directly, but as mentioned in the group 3, like having that be compensated time and making sure to honor their time and their commitment. We also, one of our group members highlighted possibly involving a local farm and having feedback about specific, produce items or what have you, especially if the farm was owned by Indigenous people, that would really be beneficial to have their feedback. And then we did talk about taste testing. Again, this is kind of a time relevant thing to do far in advance to get enough feedback before menuing the item. And then just doing some online research as well, kind of the first stepping stone, doing some initial research, potential food, honoring Native food traditions, potential recipes that may lend themselves to be prepared in school food service. And then lastly, talking to surrounding school districts, rather than recreating the wheel, it might be nice to just talk to school districts that may have already done this in the past.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That's a really important point, is like the sharing within the school community about who else has done this, and can they help you out. So for the interest of time, so for the final group, there's not time for sharing, so I apologize for that. I want to make sure you guys get to go at 3. So before we go, I did want to share some lessons, other lessons learned that we've learned at Food Corps through using the shifting tool. So some factors that can minimize the effectiveness of the tool is introducing it outside the context of a specific project, or like, and applying it without, and it is a tool that is really, it's most useful when it has something to be applied to. Not giving time that it deserves with the robust dialogue that needs to happen. Again, equity takes time, and I know time is a precious commodity that we don't have. But I think being able to value equity through giving it time is important. We are at 3, so I do just want to just quickly say, use it at the beginning of a project, not at the end. Again, don't expect perfection, and don't get caught up in one letter that you don't see the full picture. So one thing that I did want to share with you is that in these resources slide deck, there is a link to a document where what you saw on the Jamboard is put into a very nice PDF form, fillable document that's very easy to follow, and it's designed to help with project planning in mind. So that is where you can find the shifting tool at its most usable for you. But with that, I want to thank you all for joining today. I really appreciate your time. I want to thank Mass Farm to School for inviting me to talk about equity in school meals. And of course, my contact information, additional ways to connect with Food Corps are in these last 2 slides in the slide deck, which you'll get.